What is the most NSFW thing you have seen at your job? Walked in on my GM, do BJ, in the beer cooler at an Applebee's when I was a closing cook. Never said a thing and didn't make it awkward. Even hit them with a my bad. Asked my GM for a raise every few months and never got denied. Unfortunately, he moved to a different store about a year after that. Thought I found an infinite money glitch. Story 2. Had thing with the clothing department girl at Walmart. Once I called her to get her returns, she didn't come, so I said it again. Mid-announcement, I get a text. It's a video. Her naked pleasure herself in the dressing room, and I could hear myself in the background. Story 3. I work as a tour guide here in Copenhagen, Denmark. I had an American couple from NYC on a tour, and suddenly we notice a crazy homeless dude pleasure himself inside his basketball shorts while giving everyone around him a look I can best describe as manic or crazed. Then one of my guests looks at his husband and says, "Look, honey, it's just like being back home." Story 4. Worked at a movie theater and caught two of my coworkers banging it out in the room we kept the popcorn seat. The guy was embarrassed, but later, the girl said I should have stayed and watched. That place was ducking crazy. Story 5. I was working construction on a house with no heat in the winter. Couldn't get the gas line dug or something. Just me and another guy for weeks, no porta potty. We were peeing outside and crap in spackle buckets. We eventually ran out of spackle buckets and started keeping them outside to freeze and double crap them, then eventually triple crap them. Till one day, we arrived in the morning to find someone had stolen 21 frozen double and triple crap spackle buckets with the lids on that were stacked neatly outside the garage. I often think of that poor soul, and if that was the last time they stole. Story 6. Working graveyard shift at a casino kitchen on Christmas Eve. You can see a few of the booths from the kitchen. Only had one table in, and I was just chilling. The table was in one of those booths. Guy and a girl sitting on the same side of the booth, facing the kitchen. Girl sees me as I glance out there, locks eyes with me, whispers to her guy, slides over on his lap and starts bouncing. Story 7. Lists of adult website. I work in IT, and one of the services we provide our clients includes content filtering. On one particular occasion, we took on a new client and put in place our standard filters. The owner came back and said he didn't want content filtering on his computer at all. We came back and said, this is a security feature and we highly advise against turning it off completely. And if told us what sites he needs access to, we could either unblock certain categories or whitefish certain sites. While waiting for a reply, we checked the logs to see if we could preemptively make some changes. So much film. I'm not here to judge people, but seriously, you own a very successful business. Can you not afford a second computer for personal needs? Story 8. Worked in EMS. Show up at a house of an older couple for a female who is constipated. I walk in and he yells, "They're in the back bathroom." As I turn the corner into that bathroom, I see the female is in on all fours, and the man has his entire hand you know where. That beautiful spring day was ruined. Story 9. I worked at a KFC. I was the chicken man that day, breading all the chicken, putting it on racks, and getting ready to put it in the fryer. Something happened, and the whole stack of racks fell to the floor, sending raw chicken everywhere. My shift manager told me to pick it all up and fry it anyway, since the fryer will kill all the germs. We served people floor chicken that day at Story 10. I worked for a pest control company. There have been a few. I was doing an inspection for rodent activity, mobile home, single abusive mom. I wasn't seeing a lot of activity on the outside of the home. Then I went inside. The absolute worst I've ever seen. The mice were established inside the home. They had tunnels running between rooms, literal piles of fecal matter around the home. This was a place where, if the plague started anywhere, it would have been at this location. I actually left this place, went straight to the landlord, and strongly recommended them to contact social services ASAP. I lost sleep over this one. No child should ever have to live like this. Story 11. Walked in on a substances-fueled MMF threesome in the walk-in cooler toward the end of a holiday party at a restaurant I once worked at. All were coworkers. Story 12. I wasn't the one to catch him, but I was working at a restaurant, and we had a host disappear for like an hour before our manager went looking for him. He found him barricaded in the bathroom, buck naked to substances in his toes. Story 13. Saw a dude's lost his arm. Not the act, but the aftermath. I was desktop support for a hospital and had gone down to the trauma room to replace a mouse. Story 14. I worked at a place that made cement. There was always big piles of cement dust that would spill. There was a truck the size of a dump truck that was basically a super vacuum. You could run a hose like 50 yards and it would still have suction like you wouldn't believe. There was this guy who wasn't that bright that was using the hose, and sometimes it will clog with bigger chunks and you would have to hit the hose with a hammer. I just happened to look up one time, and instead of using the hammer, he was gonna grab it out with his hand. Well, as you would expect, his arm got sucked into the hose. He was screaming, and we got it turned off in about 30 seconds, but by that time his arm was like double the size and purple, and blood was like coming out of the pores. He looked around and said, "I don't feel good," and collapsed. They ended up having a helicopter come and pick him up. He was okay, but almost lost his arm. He has to spend the rest of his life on blood thinners because they said it caused blood clots, and that's a problem because he was a hardcore alcoholic. That was a crazy job. People were always getting hurt, but it was mostly because they were doing stupid stuff. Story 15. Funeral home dropped a 450-pound body on the floor when transferring it to the gurney from the bed. I've seen a lot at my job, but that one's going to stick with me. Story 16. I worked at a newspaper in the 1990s when a multiple murder took place. The guy went nuts and hurt 5 members of his family in 2 locations, and they passed away. The police photographer was busy at one site, so the cops commandeered our photographer at the other home to take crime scene photos. They asked for negatives and small prints in a quick turnaround so they could be assured of having what they need. The photographer took the photos as instructed and came back to the office. He developed the film, but broke down crying and saying he couldn't do anything more. I was the night editor and the only other person there with darkroom experience. So I made about 105 by 7 prints, about half of which were about this awful crime. Even in black and white, those images stick in my head to this day. But at least I wasn't our photographer, who had to be about 2 feet away from the bodies for some shots. Story 17. I worked in a large aircraft avionics overhaul shop about 10 years ago. The technicians were lined up in open rows of workbenches in a warehouse-sized shop. There were probably 50 to 60 technicians in the shop at the time. One of the techs was listening quietly to some music on a Bluetooth speaker on his workbench, then got up to use the restroom. A few moments later, the music on the speaker was replaced by that fast-paced, high-pitched, over-exaggerated Japanese adult film squeaks. It was quiet at first. Then the volume went up to full blast while horrified technicians looked at each other. Finally, a nearby tech turned it off. The dude went into the bathroom to pleasure himself and forgot his phone was still connected to his speaker. He couldn't hear sound coming out of his phone, so turned it up. He must have realized what had happened because after he came out of the bathroom, after a long while, he went straight home. He ended up losing his job over it once HR caught wind of it. Story 18. As a lineman. Graduation night, a car full of a pole center. Wire down ambulance won't give aid until all clear. Driver was ejected, hit the pole was laying on the hood. Unrecognizable. Other was ejected far enough away from wire to get treatment, but passed away. Story 19. When I had a McJob, the break room was also the changing room and co-ed, and no one was shy. They should have been, though. Story 20. I used to be a denier. Basically assisted the pathologist with autopsies. Once the pathologist was done taking their job, I'd sew it on up and send the body to the mortuary. Pretty gnarly gig, but I just couldn't handle the smell. For long story 21, the owner of the company had everyone, about 50 people, gather in a large room and watch his assistant, whose fake tits he paid for, get a lap dance from a beefy, shirtless cowboy for her birthday. This was my first week, by the way. Best part was just looking around at all the facial reactions of embarrassment and internal dialogue. Of one of my co-workers was unfazed, just going to town on a foot-long sandwich while it was all happening. Story 22. Worked at a bar for a few months where all the staff would frequently have afters. It's around 5 a.m., and it's just me, my friend, and our boss. I went to the bathroom and then did an Irish goodbye, but the 12-foot high gate around the building was locked. Only the boss and supervisors knew the code, so I went back inside to find them in the kitchen. They didn't know I was still there, and my boss was lay on the counter, him duck her, them both moaning. I panic and announce I can't get out, so she had to let me out. We were all mortified. She texted me the next day asking if I could not tell anyone, so I didn't. I was the only member of staff who got away with being late all the time for the next 2 years. Story 23. Back when I was a bartender, I walked in on the shift manager and one of the kitchen guys doing the deed in the mop closet. We called that closet the coitus closet after that day. Story 24. Saw a supervisor jump out the back of a container and his wedding ring caught on the hinge. First aider pulled it back on like a sock and saved the finger. It didn't do much after that, but didn't need to be removed. Story 25. I did apartment maintenance. I have seen more dead bodies there than I did a year in Iraq in 2003. One time a guy passed sitting on his couch naked watching adult film. When we got, there was also quite a bit of random encounters. Story 26. A maintenance lady electrocuted herself. I didn't physically see her do it as much as the arc flash that happened as I was 30 yards away on a raised platform loading panels. I ran over and someone was performing CPR on her, and you could tell that she passed away from the damn near hole-looking burn in her chest. Emergency responders took over 15 minutes to arrive and take her away, and my statement on how I saw nothing of importance was over 8 pages long, drafted by the company for OSHA. The lady was 100% at fault since she wasn't following lockout tag-out procedures, and her family received something around $2 million in a settlement. The smell was that of a burnt steak and hair, which is almost impossible to forget. Story 27. I water people's plants for a living. I went into the guy's bathroom, and there was a full body mirror in his shower with a big heap of hair on the floor. And then I went to the spare bedroom. There were camping foam mattresses on the floor with rolled-up quilts everywhere on the floor instead of a bed. A camera set up on a stand with discarded condom wrappers on the ground. I have made it my life's mission to find this adult film on the internet so that I can point to the corner and say, hey, that's my plant. Story 28. I work in IT. This is years ago before content filtering and website blocking and good antivirus. One of my company's clients was a large law firm. One of the partners is constantly getting viruses, and I'm constantly having to drive up to their office to fix the guy's computer because it would cut off our remote access. After a bunch of times, the managing partner of the firm calls us and asks us why this guy is constantly getting viruses. Me and a coworker drive up there to investigate. Thankfully, the lawyer wasn't there. We start investigating and really aren't finding anything. Finally, we think to use a tool that reveals deleted browser history. 9 to 10 a.m. work, 10 to 12 p.m. sports betting and adult film, 12:30, we assumed lunch break, 12:30 to 4:30 more of the same adult film and sports betting, 4:30 to 5 work. We're not sure what to tell the main managing partner. We set up content filtering and run damage control as best as we can. Most NSFW, part of the entire situation. This lawyer's secretary, whose desk was 20 feet away, was his mother. Story 29. At a previous job, woman had just given birth, maximum 12 hours prior. Came in to do post-obs and found her husband in bed with her basically begging her for it. I believe he was saying it would be quick and she was being cruel for refusing. I believe I quoted that viral meme word for word. Oh, my stay off of her. This was her second baby in less than 2 years. I still think about that poor woman. Story 30. First job, massive company, 200,000 plus employees. An exec sending an email thread called, "What does the pussy look like?" with the photo of a cat strapped with explosives. Didn't get fired or reprimanded. Other job, also massive company. People doing substances in the bathroom at the Xmas party. Story 31. I am a tattooer. Female, in case that adds any context. Let's see. There was a guy doing met in the bathroom. Multiple different times, older women have taken their tops or bras off unprompted for tattoos that did not require that. A woman pulling her boobs out to show me her nipple piercings. I did not ask to see them or anything. One time, a retired escort getting a hip tattoo kept pulling her thong to the side to show me her stuff. There's lots more, but that's off the top of my head. Lots of creepy dudes going too far as well. But my friend who tattoos in the station next to me has one of the worst ones I've heard. He was tattooing a woman near the inner thigh, I believe. She was moaning and stuff. He was uncomfortable, and then bam, she finished. Luckily, had the undies on still, but that's crazy. He also had a dude that pissed himself while he was passed out. And that's not including all the violent incidents I've seen. Story 32. Worked help desk early on. Guy called in and asked to look at his email because something was wrong. It was a junk pic. Email read, "Hey, we passed each other in the break room, and I thought you were cute," with a full junk attached. I informed him that this was for HR, not IT. Story 33. Hardcore adult film being played in a staff meeting of 200 plus. Since the company caters to customers interested in NSFW products, it passed without mention. I never got used to it though. Story 34. I didn't see it, but apparently there was a video of a guy sticking his junk in the bread slicer at the bread factory I worked at. They both ended up getting fired because of it. Story 35. I saw an assistant manager attempt to abuse a subordinate next to a dumpster at a Christmas party. He was promptly fired, but that doesn't make up for the attempt and the fact he was harassing this poor lady at work for at least 6 months. Story 36. Homeless dude do his meets in the parking lot. Not even trying to hide, dude was just in the middle of the parking lot full in pleasure himself. Story 37. Caught a work buddy, pants around his ankles, balls deep in the office bicycle. Everyone eventually took her for a ride. And she was a pretty fine ride, I must admit. Story 38. Saw a guy get hit by a pavement roller. I do not work in construction, but my office shared the parking lot. The driver put the roller in reverse and couldn't hear his partner over the engine. The guy who was run over was looking down at the fresh pavement. Story 39. First week working at a public library. I walked in on a naked homeless man bathing himself in the bathroom. I Abe Simpsoned out there so fast. Nothing could have prepared me for that. Story 40. Coworker wrapped his junk in plastic wrap and put a label on in it for health violations. We sent the homophobic coworker into the walk-in for something. Story 41. An addict somehow managed to do an interpretive dance reenactment of the YouTube video Hippo Butt Explosion in the men's washroom. We had to close that section of the building for a couple days while a hazmat remediation company dealt with it. Story 42. When I worked at Wendy's. Our boss was a weirdo, but my coworkers had no idea the extent of it. One day he left his Google Docs open on the desk in the office. A few of us went in to do training on the computer. We snooped and oh boy did we regret it. One of the docs was named Rules for the House. This page listed off rules he had for his wife and the consequences of they weren't followed for each. Many were very extremely controlling. We stopped reading because we all realized that nobody should know this kind of crap. We all figured that they were into crap, but this was next level weird controlling fetish. Never looked at my boss the same. I quit a few months later, and 2 weeks after I quit, he got fired for stealing. Something tells me he's just a complete POS. Story 43. NSFW is not always sexual, especially in construction. I had a wild boy/man Mexican dude as a supervisor. Later found out he was an addict. We were demoing drywall from an elevator shaft, about 5 floors up, and he gets inside the MF with zero fall protection and says, "Hold my belt." Construction is absolutely the most NSFW, non-OSHA compliant safety third environment you've ever seen. Story 44. I had to have difficult conversions with coaches because of adult film on the company network. I had to take screenshots from the firewall logs and put them in front of them to confront them. Some people have some unusual fetishes, not kink shaming, but crap, bro, not on the company network. Even worse is that this was open office floor plan without walls. I have some truly incredible IT department war stories. Story 45. At a grocery store I used to work at, one of my coworkers crapped his pants an hour into his shift. Instead of going home, he rinsed off his underwear in the bathroom sink, put them in a plastic bag to take home and wash later, then went commando for the rest of his shift. We also had a mentally challenged kid get caught with his hand down his pants in the middle of the bread aisle by a little old lady. Not only did he keep his job, but he faced zero repercussions whatsoever because his dad helped fast-track the store's liquor license application when we first opened. Story 46. Years ago, when I worked as a correctional officer on the Supermax floor of the mental health unit at a max security prison, saw a lot of NSFW stuff, but the worst involved a very disturbed predator who had a fixation with self-harm. I was walking the block to do cell checks at the end of my shift, and this guy was towards the beginning of my short loop. When I walked past his cell, he waved and said hello. Took about 5 to 10 minutes to walk down, check/chat with inmates, and walk back up. Right as I get ready to signal for the door to open, I hear Buddy holler out from his cell, "Officer, I did a bad thing." I walk back over, and he is standing naked from the waist down, covered in blood, with a pool of slightly chunky gore on the floor beneath him. At some point, he'd cracked open a safety razor to take the blade out, then used that to hurt themselves. This was around 20 years ago, and I can still very clearly hear his voice calling out to me that day on the block. Story 47. This absolute dumbass using a forklift to its highest point, climbing up onto the top and balancing on it to reach for something, and coming back down grinning like he knew what he was doing or something. Story 48. We had last workday before 4-week holiday period, so we supposed to work till first break and clean up factory. And I was working with CNC machine in separate room, normally with 2 more people, and other rooms supposed to work around 30 people. It was like 20 minutes before break and very quiet, and did not see anyone at all. Kept doing my work till I saw ambulance car driving to factory. Apparently coworker came, and I asked what happened, and he looked like just seen ghost and said, "Accident with name, very bad accident." And yeah, he lost 3 of his fingers. Did not see it happening, but I seen aftermath with blood. I did not had any contract with any coworker at the time, but he was one of local guys who always came very happy and positive, greeted me and were super nice and respectful. So I got his number and like a week later messaged him wishing well and that I feel super sad for him. But he answered very positive as always. Started slowly coming back to work and building up his hours. And finally, 1.5 years later, he works again full-time and being super positive as always. Well, he was super bummed that he's supposed to go to AC/DC concert and missed it because it happened. Story 49. Worked at an airport, and there was this plane that had been sitting in a field for 10 years or something. Some idiot got the idea to fix it up and sell it. Well, this shady dude hired some pushover mechanic to pencil whip the maintenance. The day it was being prepped for flight, I looked in the engine compartment and saw the oil filters that were on it from 2012. I know this because the Sharpie date was still there. So they literally didn't even do the bare minimum maintenance to get this plane ready. Well, as you could imagine, the takeoff didn't go as planned. Dude used literally 100% of the runway just to get off the ground, barely cleared the trees at the end, and was barely climbing. He decided to start a left-hand turn to come back around, and he disappeared behind trees. 10 seconds later, and a black plume of smoke. We got in the airport truck ASAP and raced to the scene. Got there and the plane was sitting in a field with 30-foot flames. Found out later from a firefighter that the guy did survive the crash, but the impact jammed the door closed and kept him trapped in the plane. So the guy was trapped in a burning plane while me and another co-worker sat and watched. Still ducks me up when I think about it. Story 50. Girl got wildly drunk at an office party and did a full-blown tabletop strip show in front of 900 employees and their spouses. Went into work on the following Monday, and not only had her desk been cleaned out, but the entire desk was just gone. A message from management that she was scorched earth for good. And as a workplace first aider, some dude zipped himself up something about Mary style, beans above the frank. Somewhere in an office file drawer is an incident report that says, traumatic laceration of skin in mechanical zipper, story 51. I saw a body get carried down the jet bridge steps years ago at the airport I worked at. Fun fact, if a person happens to pass or have a heart attack on an aircraft, they can't declare them deceased until they're off the aircraft. The flight had diverted to us, and I happened to get into work after it had happened. Manager asked me to run something to maintenance and explained what had happened before. Man went into cardiac arrest on a flight. Flight diverted here. The man's body was still in the jet bridge because they were waiting for the coroner to come back it up. Just so happened by the time I was hooking everything up to take what I needed to drop off at maintenance, the coroner's van pulls up, and I watched them carry a body wrapped in a blanket down the steps. Also one day, someone wanted to check a bag with breast milk. Needless to say, the breast milk didn't make it down to the bag room in one piece and was just leaking everywhere. Story 52. Retail PC repair in the early noughties. Laptop wouldn't boot to Windows, and the guy wanted his pics and videos saved. I pulled the drive and slapped an IDE adapter on it and booted up my tester PC with it as the slave drive. Dude's laptop was absolutely full of CP. The HDD had run out of space, causing the crash because of his 10 gig plus of CP. I locked the drive in the safe and called the manager. The manager called the owner called his lawyer, the lawyer called the cops. I'm pretty sure the guy went to prison. Story 53, walked in on a producer duck by a stage tech because they didn't think anyone was in the building. But it was late and I had to poop and didn't know they were in the building. No, I didn't hear them. We had white noise playing in the hall, and I had my edit room music tuned up because that studio creeped me out. Story 54, around 1 a.m., I got a call from neighbors of a house I was remodeling saying they saw two people going into the house carrying something large. Police are called and found my employee Keith having sex with a very old lady he met at the bar. He brought his own mattress. Story 55, saw a dude's arm get lost after a metal shaving wrapped around the sleeve of the sweater he was wearing. To be fair, he was being a dumbass and reached in to adjust something on boring cutter while wearing long sleeves. But it took just one long metal shaving to get caught and start twisting his sleeve. The shirt actually twisted so tightly that it pulled his arm in. He's lucky he didn't pass. Just a wild injury. Story 56. Worked in an office full of sales guys, not girls guys. There were two of us girls in our department. The sales guys would randomly come up behind us and snap our bras. I was 27, she was 33. The sales guys at the time were all in their 50s and 60s, long-term employees. This was before the Me Too movement, so we didn't say anything. I regret it to this day. Story 57. My boss/owner at the time was this obnoxious, loud-mouthed jujitsu guy. He was always right and everyone was either an idiot. One day I had to go onto the shared drive and found a video. He had shot a professional adult film, Story 58. A guy put a grinding disc through a highly flammable glue drum and didn't remove the cap. It was the biggest boom I've ever heard. The lid blew off and smashed his face in, but he lived. The bottom of the drum ripped off as well and put a clean slice through the warehouse roller door across the driveway. Luckily, it was early in the morning and the crew working next door hadn't arrived, as someone would have been decapitated. As behind the roller door was one of their assembly stations, Story 59, unsecured 5-gallon paint can in the drum shaker. It flew like gleaming missile once it broke through the flimsy plexiglass door and sailed, gently, punching a rectangle through drywall and into the customer area. Gray paint everywhere. Very NSFW, Story 60. A fertilizer truck was in a car accident and exploded. The corpse of the driver was still seated in the driver's seat when the fire department was putting out the fire. It was just flailing around the charred remains of the truck. I remember thinking that it looking like a movie prop. Story 61. Worked at a hotel. Came in one day. The usually chill admin was very frazzled. GM got busted by US Marshals for CP. Over 10,000 images found on his work computer. Busted a huge international adult film ring in Netherlands based on imagery on his computer. Felt sad for his family. And the victims too. Story 62. Worked in warehouses in my early 20s and would constantly see guys 20 to 30 feet in the air on the picker without a harness, walking on the forks to grab items off the top racks. Pretty insane because those pickers shake when you're that high and one wrong step and you're paralyzed, dead. Story 63. Welder took a 4-inch STD wall pipe to the head because they didn't have a spotter flagging for the tractor carrying the pipe. He passed away because he didn't have his hard hat on with his welding mask in place. Story 64. I worked as a CNA before I became a nurse. One day when I was working on the dementia unit, I had the unfortunate luck of walking into a room and seeing a lady pleasure herself. That was a terrible day to have eyes. Story 65. Saw the aftermath of what 2 deranged psychotic inmates who hurt people for fun did to an inmate they befriended over the course of a week. Roughly 20 minutes in a cell together, head met metal bed frame, metal table, and concrete floor. They did not hold back. One additional ducked-up part was one of the inmates involved was only in on a 2-year bit. For some reason, he clung on and became fascinated with this other inmate who had murdered several people, including another inmate, before. He was like a mentor to him and wanted to learn the trade. Both refused lawyers, self-represented, pleas guilty, and it was all done with, court-wise, in less than a month. Story 66. Worked at a now-gone restaurant. Guy worked at the front, making salads and greeting customers. His girlfriend worked in the dining room. She'd disappear for 20 minutes when it slowed down in the middle of the day. GM and I caught her hiding in the cabinet to BJ him while he was tossing salads, the actual edible kind. Different restaurant chain. Walked in on a cook and a server in the walk-in freezer before we opened, ducking like they had a deadline. He bailed on her when he heard the refrigerator door open, had to walk into the refrigerator to get to the freezer. She couldn't get dressed fast enough. Retail chain. My regional VP and I walked in on a very large dude, store manager, and one of the dog groomers slamming hams on his desk at 5:30 a.m. Dude had the longest butt crack I've ever seen. That's 3 of probably 20 times I've run into people who work together getting busy. People in retail and food service that find a kindred spirit, duck like rabbits, wherever they can find just enough time/space to be alone. Story 67. This literally happened yesterday. I work at a shop on 6th Street in Austin. Next door is a bar with live music every night of the week. A homeless lady walking down the street decided to dance to the music. She was really feeling it, so she removed her long coat she was wearing to reveal that she was completely naked head to toe and proceeded to helicopter her tits for like 5 minutes until she saw cops took off running. This was about 4:30 in the afternoon. Fun times on 6th, Story 68, around 2005. Assistant principal was so very proud of the internet filter he paid a ton of money for, so the students would not have their minds corrupted. He was having we teachers test it out during a meeting, mostly to gloat. 3 of us that were in the least bit competent with computers were playing adult film is less than a minute. My trick was using an address that redirected to an adult site. Story 69. I used to work in the events industry and would travel with my clients, mostly internal-facing corporate stuff. Had an hour free, went for a walk on the beach, only to come across 2 women dragging a deceased man from the ocean and crying for help. I had left my phone, so I yelled at someone to call 911 while another guy started CPR. Ended up sitting with the CPR dude after the lifeguard got there because he was shaking so hard. Watched a professional hired speaker do substances about 30 minutes before he went on stage. He was sniffling the entire presentation and talking a million miles a minute. They had paid him $25,000 to be there. Story 70. We installed cameras in the warehouse because we thought the warehouse guy was stealing. I tried convincing other managers they were wrong. I didn't think he was. The sort of theft happening, I didn't think he was smart enough to pull it off. He knew we installed the cameras and he knew where they were. About 2 weeks after installing them, we watch a video of him coming back to the warehouse after hours. He wasn't there to steal, he had brought an escort. They had sex on a stack of pallets in the warehouse. He was surprised when he got fired. Story 71. Worked at Corp Pet Store. Was doing some deep cleaning around the store. My GM decided to pour a bottle of bleach down the drain. I've never seen so many roaches in my life. Joe's apartment times 100, Story 72. I couple trying to discreetly have sex on a bar stool at a company Christmas party at House of Blues. They were not discreet. In their drunk minds, they thought hiding behind some friends standing around in her skirt would make it look like they were just making out. The thing about Christmas parties in our industry back then was everyone had amnesia the next day, as long as you didn't punch anyone or get arrested at the actual party. That same party, our vice chairman walked in on 5 guys blasting rails in a handicap stall. None of these people got so much as a warning. My direct report now is the type of guy that goes to church ice cream socials and tells bad golf jokes. How times have changed. Story 73. There's a few. Dead guy in his bathroom covered in all the bodily fluids. An escort having a bowel movement. The fecal matter was not natural looking. A bathroom full of sex toys suctioned onto the walls. Alcoholics passed out in their own urine. Story 74. Used to work as an international news editor for a daily newspaper. The AP photo stream from the Middle East will keep you awake at night. Story 75. My first day at a new company, I was greeted by the CEO in the lobby area. We were chit-chatting when the warehouse manager opened the door and lobbed a in-flashbang grenade. That job was ducking insane. Story 76. I was replacing a bearing set on one of those big, tall spinning brushes at a car wash when my boss decided that she'd start running cars as repairs are done without closing. When I said that it'll fall off onto a vehicle, she didn't listen. It fell on a truck and ended up costing about $10,000 all said and done. She actually just violated FMLA protections pretty damn bad as well. I'm so ready to find another job. Story 77. Working in a restaurant. Line cook only wants to wear combat boots. Line cook spills hot oil he was carrying right into his boots. Story 78. No, I saw a guy put a 55-gallon drum of Toll Wayne on its side, lift it up about 4 feet on the forks of forklift, and drive it over a vat to pour it off. He opened the little 3/4-inch bung on the top to let air in, then the big 2-inch bung to start the pour. He didn't ground the vat, the drum, or the lift. For those that don't know why this was bad, Toll Wayne is extremely flammable and has a flash point of 40 degrees Fahrenheit, meaning that's when vapors begin to form. Also, pouring liquids generates static electricity that can spark, like shuffling your feet in socks across a carpet and touching your sister's nose. It sparked, he passed. Story 79, commercial black cod fisherman here. A guy hurt his femoral artery while putting his knife back into the sheath on his belt. He got a tourniquet and was airlifted by the US Coast Guard. Story 80, I work in retail. As I was doing a night shift, there was a sock that one of my coworkers found that was rock hard, crusty yellow, and it was a baby sock. It was obvious what it was. Someone just had to bust a load real quick. Story 81, saw a guy get a hand caught in a steel forming roll. He panicked and used his other, had retry and push himself out. Both hands got stuck. He ended up pulling his hands out, degloving both hands. OSHA came for an incident report and basically said, "Yup, safety protections were in place. He was just extra stupid." Story 82. The early 90s, worked as the night manager at a video store while working. The owner would get very cheap adult film from a guy he knew in Chinatown. My job was to watch every adult film he got and make sure it was, in fact, this, and not anything obviously illegal. I watched them on fast forward, but it was still a boring slog. It's not fun when it's your job. Anyway, I personally pulled several I thought were horrible, very rough sex, and to me abusive, but thankfully, I didn't see anything really bad. Story 83. I used to work in mental health. It was probably the lady whose face was rotting off from a staph infection. Other than that, normal poop stuff and random nudity from ill people. Story 84. Disgusting titties. Was working security, and they decided they needed to flash me. I wasn't even interacting with them. Impossible to tell if they were a male or female because of conflicting and confusing gender characteristics. That and they were well over 500 pounds and hadn't bathed for a while. I've seen death and horror firsthand, but this was somehow more revolting. Story 85. I overdosed fish on a substances derivative fairly often. Apparently, the only ethical way to hurt a fish is to give them the best high of their little lives. Story 86. At the house the Waltons built, someone hit me with about 1,500 pounds. I don't know the exact number, but it was a pallet stacked higher than it's supposed to be with 50 pounds bags of pet food because they were showing off and running as fast as they could down a path I had to work in. My knee is still ducked up, and I didn't even get workers' comp or get check put on their dime because, like a ducking idiot, I was trying to be a team player and not cause problems. To the inevitable first reaction, yeah, I ducking know. It's been almost 20 years, it's too late to do anything about it now. Honestly, I was probably lucky they just took out my cart and that caught my knee. If they'd run me over directly, I probably would have been far more badly hurt. Story 87. Former ER nurse. Various objects up the chute. Cucumber, Ken doll, massive jawbreaker, banana and a condom, etc. A guy with his arm deep inside a meat grinder. They had to detach the machine from the counter and bring it all in with his arm still in it like it was down a tuba. Place smelled like sausage for hours. A jumper who pancaked from the 5th floor of a parking structure. A kid with a tri-hook fishing lure in his eyeball. Story 88. I was interning at a law firm. There was this secretary, a beautiful black woman with waist-length dreads, who had her eye on me. It was 100% predatory, and I was 100% on board with it. One day, one of the partners told us both to go down to the storage room in the basement and sort all the boxes to be compliant with records retention. We spent most of the time stacking the boxes of musty files to make a blind, behind which I propped her up on another stack of boxes and railed her silly. We did this for about a month. We dated for another 13 years. Story 89. When I was in the mines, the amount of times I would see guys walk out underneath freshly cut sections without a single roof bolt placed. Absolute death. Story 90. I saw a naked man poop on the floor, take 2 pieces of bread, make a turd sandwich and eat it. Dude got moved to a place where he could get more help. Story 91. I used to work at a hospital pharmacy, and one time I went into a patient's room to pull a med from their cabinet. Well, the patient pulled out his central line, which caused massive bleeding, but this patient was just carrying on. When I went into the room, he was trying to put on some pants while standing in a widening pool of his own blood. There were alarms going off, but he must have been one of those patients, TH, at our very active and causing false alarms. I went to tell a nurse, and she brushed it off as just him acting up. I told her she needed to go into the room and check it out. She did, casually walking towards the room. She immediately ran out and screamed at another nurse to call a code. Story 92. Worked as the KM at an assisted living home, was bringing out a dish to a woman who was only 60. She had gotten diagnosed with brain cancer 6 months prior. She deteriorated so quickly. She stood up and fell over that day. Her head smashed the top of the metal chair. So much blood. She didn't make it. What's your most embarrassing caught in the act NSFW moment? Story 1. Not exactly doing the deed, but I was aggressively shaking a protein shaker bottle under my desk during a huge WFH Zoom meeting. My camera was positioned chest up. After about 30 seconds, a coworker privately messaged me, "Dude, turn your camera off. Everyone can see your shoulder move." I realized what it looked like and had to slowly raise the shaker bottle into the frame to prove my innocence to 40 people. The chat went completely silent. Story 2. It wasn't me. I had a 5,000 square foot office space with some spare offices. One of my clients was let go by his employer. I liked the guy, had a good working relationship, so I offered to let him use one of our spare offices while he got back on his feet. Several months into the arrangement, it seemed to be going well. He paid me rent while he got a business idea off the ground. One Sunday, I went into the office to get a little work done. Since there was a lot of natural light in the space, I didn't turn on the lights while I walked down the hall to the break room to make a pot of coffee. I walk past Howard's office and he is in there railing his assistant from his former employer. She is naked on the desk while he's just ducker. Mind you, they were both married. I said, "What are you guys doing?" Even though it was obvious. He freaked and slammed his office door shut. About 10 minutes later, she is dressed and comes into my office crying, begging me to not tell anyone. I tell her that I'm not going to rat her out. She leaves. A few minutes later, Howard comes down the hall. I thought he was going to apologize. Instead, he wants to brag on nailing Christy and how hot she was. "Howard, I want you out of here by the end of the day. Leave your key with the guard downstairs, or I'll let your wife know everything." I then left and told the guard what was going on. "Oh, they've been coming here every weekend," was his reply. They eventually got caught and both their spouses filed for divorce. Story 3. When I was 16, my best friend and his mom came home early from a baseball game. To me and his twin sister in the living room. She was so loud we didn't hear the car. They thought she was being attacked or something. Throw the front door open and just stand there is absolute shock. Door wide. Story 4. Got caught having sex with my ex by my dad. She was riding me and her back was towards the door. He just barged in to say bye because he was leaving for work. We just laughed about it and never brought it up again. My ex was mortified though. Oh, I got caught pleasure in the bathroom by my mom too. She laughed and yelled, "That why you always lock doors?" Also never speak about that to this day. Story 5. Ex's mom walked in, had no idea we were fooling around under the covers, and had a long conversation with us about if we wanted tacos for dinner. Ruined sex and tacos for a while. Story 6. Got caught by campus security, giving it to a girl in the courtyard between two of the campus buildings in the dead of night. I remember getting hit with a flashlight beam and the blood rushing to my face while this gal was bent over a stone bench. Thing is, I followed the advice of a mad lad I knew. If you get caught doing something and stop, you're instantly in the wrong. But if you keep going and stare down the intruder, they will recess their action. I don't know how it worked, but after about 10 seconds of continuing, I heard, "Finish up and get the duck out of here." Then the light beam disappeared and the guy left. Story 7. I was on a date one night with my ex at the time in Central Park, and he decided to be spontaneous because there wasn't anyone around where we were walking. So we scoped the area for a discreet spot and found one down a hill near the tree in the lake. Well, we sit there for a bit, talk, make out, the usual, and then that's where I started feeling horny and gave him a BJ. As things were getting more heated and we were about to do the deed, out of the blue, a NYPD cop car that was hiding nearby flashed its lights at us and started hollering and laughing at us with a group of cops. They had apparently been watching us the entire time from hiding. We quickly got dressed and left, feeling completely embarrassed. This happened about 3 or 4 years ago, and I've never gone back to Central Park since. Story 8. One woman became somewhat of a legend among her friends. She and a guy she had been seeing decided to spend some private time together at her house while no one else was home. According to him later, things were getting pretty intense when suddenly her mom came home earlier than expected and walked straight into the room. Her mom froze and said, "Oh my, what's going on?" Completely unfazed, the woman calmly replied, "Mom, we're busy. Please close the door." Her mom quietly did exactly that and walked away. Story 9. I was on vacation with my family, staying at a hotel where the bathroom had 2 separate doors, one connected to the hallway and one to the bedroom. I wasn't used to that setup. I remembered to lock the door I entered through, but I completely forgot about the other one. While I was alone in there, my mom accidentally walked in. Fortunately, my back was turned, and she immediately realized and left without saying anything. It was awkward, but thankfully brief. Story 10. My grandmother once accidentally walked in on me and my girlfriend during a private moment. She immediately turned around faster than I've ever seen anyone move and left without saying a word. We never spoke about it afterward, but from then on, she always knocked first. Story 11. My ex and I were relaxing together in his parents' jacuzzi late one night. The bubbles were on, and we assumed the water gave us enough privacy. But neither of us realized the bubble timer would eventually turn off automatically. Suddenly, the water became completely clear. Right at that moment, his mom walked outside carrying groceries and saw us. She froze in place and the silence was unbearable. Story 12. One time, my parents came home unexpectedly while my girlfriend and I were in my room. We heard them enter the house, and she quickly ran to the closet to get dressed. My dad came to my door and tried to open it, but I held it shut to give her time. It was one of the most stressful and awkward moments I've ever experienced. Rather than being cool about it, he went and told my mom. My mom forced my girlfriend to drive them both to the cul-de-sac of our neighborhood in my girlfriend's car, where my mom completely reamed my girlfriend out and then banned her from our house for a month, all while my dad did the same thing to me in our driveway. Thinking back on this, it was less embarrassing and more traumatic. Instead of making it into a teaching moment because they just shamed and punished us. There was no talk of, were you having safe sex? It was just, how dare you have sex? I think my parents and I didn't speak for a few days after that. Once, same girlfriend, we had an accident, and my mom refused to let me drive my own car. She had taken it from me because I came home an hour late or something, to the drugstore to buy Plan B. This was before Uber, and we lived too far to get there without a car. This isn't even the tip of the iceberg when it came to growing up in that house. My parents sucked. My mom used to regularly call the police on me and accuse me of things rather than talk to me. And I'm not even making that up. Once she told me the police were gonna murder me. Story 13. I went camping with a friend and went looking for IDK what at some point. I walk up to the tent window and see his short, scrawny dad trying to duck his morbidly obese mother. It's been over 25 years, and I will never unsee it. Story 14, we were playing spicy truth or dare at a hotel, and he dared me to walk out in the hall naked. I went out brave and let the door close, and there were people in the hallway, and I couldn't open the door to get back in. Story 15, not me, but I caught someone pleasure in an unused part of the office. I used to work nights in a 3-story office building, and the top floor was unused, so I would cut through it to get to a little courtyard up there to smoke cigarettes. One night I was heading back from my union-mandated smoke break when I decided to use a bathroom that was connected to one of the big corner offices. I had to crap and didn't really imagine there would be anyone in there, so I flung the door open with purpose and walked in on a guy just going to town. Phone in one hand, junk in the other. He just looked up in shock, covered his junk, and said, "Come on, man." I just backed out and closed the door. His junk was redder than hell, too. Looked like he was squish a strawberry. Story 16. Quite literally, NSFW. I was French kissing my French coworker in the office kitchen. Manager comes in to let us know the meeting is starting soon. We split quickly and were partially hidden by the corner, but no way he didn't saw and or realize what was going on. He looked at us with narrowed eyes but didn't say anything. Story 17. My ex's dad came into the room unexpectedly as we thought no one was home. His response to seeing me hiding half under the blanket was, "I'm just glad that my son isn't gay." Story 18. I was at a Halloween party that a coworker was hosting at his house. I worked in a restaurant at the time, so everyone from the restaurant was there. I got hammered, and at one point I'm downstairs in the basement alone with 2 chicks, hitting on them both. I say something that pisses one of them off, so she slaps me and storms off, but the other chick is still down. We start heavily making out, then without thinking, we go into the nearest bedroom, get naked, and start getting it on. At some point, I hear someone open the bedroom door. I have my back to it as I'm giving it, and we don't stop. The person quickly shuts the door. Then a few minutes go by and someone opens the door again, except now it's the whole ducking party standing outside of it, including the host, my coworker, in whose bed we're ducking. He is understandably very upset. He's screaming at us to get the duck out of his room, and his friends want to beat me. I put my clothes on and they force me to leave the party before I get hurt. It was the most embarrassing moment because it's the only time I've been caught in the act, but it's a very funny story to me, and I profusely apologize to everyone when I sobered up, and everyone is cool since. Story 19. I was gonna duck in the back seat with an ex in a rural wildlife management parking lot late at night in the small town I grew up in. A car drove by, then turned around immediately. We didn't even have enough time to hop up from the back seat when the ducking spotlight from the state police cruiser lit us up. There I was. He talked to us separately after we got dressed and let us off with a stern warning. Embarrassing is an understatement. Story 20. I do BJ my ex in the driveway of my house. He had gotten into his knees in the back seat and was leaning over me. We were trying something new. My dad pulled up and I saw headlights shine right towards us through the back window. Still unsure if he saw anything. Story 21. my sister walked in on me, giving my ex BJ in our shared bedroom on vacation, and current partner's dad heard him having phone sex with me. Not sure if he caught the dirty talk or him moaning or what, but he heard something apparently. Story 22. My brother lived with me in my condo. He worked from home, and our common areas were too loud, so I set him up in my walk-in closet. He had regular breaks and would take them to smoke. He had two 15-minute breaks over 8 hours. Me and my boyfriend, now husband, knew his break schedule. If he went out for a smoke and returned to the work closet, we thought we had privacy for a few hours, until we didn't. One day, brother's work server went down 10 minutes after his first break. He found us compromised. Luckily, we were mostly covered, but boyfriend was on top and definitely up to something. Brother froze. We froze. Brother looked at us and said, "Righto." We've never spoken about that day, and we've never uttered righto to one another again. Story 23. So I was at a little old watering here called the Reef in Pensacola Key. When me and my wife were first dating, we were a little tipsy, and she took me to the bathroom where we started getting it on. Lo and behold, this local addict caught us and said that it was their favorite spot too. Story 24. I and my ex, after getting finished, threw the balloon full of it away from the bed and started kissing each other. Then my sister knocked, and we were fast enough to get dressed and sit properly, and she started scrolling on her phone, and I went to attend the door when my sister came in and saw the balloon we completely forgot about. Story 25. This one isn't getting caught, but was embarrassing for us, would have sucked getting caught. Early in our relationship, my fiance and I were lazy ducking while watching a movie on the couch under a big blanket, still laying on my chest. A roommate walked in, asked what we were doing, and we replied, "Just watching a movie." Why that was our response, I don't know. To save embarrassment, I guess. He then proceeded to walk all the way into the room and plop down on a chair next to the couch we were on to watch the rest of the movie with us. We sat with her laying on top of me for the next hour until the movie was over and he left. Story 26. Having sex with my ex in my bedroom basement. Heard my mother coming downstairs and feigned sleeping. She rustled my hair, which was sweaty. I think she knew, but didn't want to say it. But then again, I'm an idiot, and the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. So she could have been equally ignorant to what I was up to. Story 27. The one thing my parents weren't really strict was having girls over. My dad was a very serious and to the point businessman type, and not always great with self-awareness or being able to read a room. I once had my girlfriend over, and generally if my parents knew I had a girl over and my door was closed, they wouldn't knock or call out for me, but I remember one time I had my girlfriend over and my dad didn't know. She was naked and I was in my boxers, and she got up to lock the door just to be safe, and as she's about 3 feet from the door, my dad barges in, sees her, and lets out a startled, "Oh," and quickly closes the door. My girlfriend turns around mortified, and 3 seconds pass, and my dad blurts out, "Feed the dog when you're done." Needless to say, after that we were done, and I never spoke about it with either of my parents. Looking back on it, it cracks me up knowing that my dad closed the door, paused, and thought to himself, yeah, it's perfectly normal to still pass on this task that needs to get done. Story 28. Me and my ex had sex on a bench next to a volleyball court. It was really cold out and just not really all that great. A few minutes in, I hear a voice say, "Okay, put it away, sir." It was 2 police officers. They had driven past and just happened to see us. They checked our IDs and let us go. We were kicked out of the bar immediately after that. Story 29. My ex, long after the breakup, was walking me to my car in a parking garage. We get there, kiss, and he spins me around, pulls down his pants and pulls up my skirt, and well, you know what happened next. It was very brief, just enough to say, yeah, we were always really good at this. And pants were zipped, he kissed me goodnight, and I drove out. A couple of days later, my boss says, "You know there's video of that garage and your car stands out? The guys have a greatest hits reel of people getting it on in the garage, and I think you'd better park somewhere else." Still totally worth it. Story 30. When I was younger, I noticed something unusual happening with my body for the first time, and I completely panicked. I didn't understand what was going on and rushed toward the bathroom, trying to deal with it privately. Unfortunately, my mom noticed I was acting strange and stopped me, asking if everything was okay. She wouldn't let me pass until I explained. Completely embarrassed, I showed her what I meant. She paused, realized what it was, and simply said, "Oh," before letting me go. Story 31. The first time my girlfriend stayed over, we went to sleep early and didn't wake up until late morning. Nothing inappropriate had happened. We had literally just slept. But my mom noticed her shoes in the garage and immediately rushed into my room. My girlfriend was under the covers, and I wasn't wearing a shirt. We both woke up suddenly and sat up, trying to cover ourselves. From my mom's perspective, it looked suspicious, and no matter what we said, she had already made up her mind. Story 32. A guy I knew thought his parents weren't home, so he invited his girlfriend over. Unfortunately, his mom was actually there. She suddenly opened the door and caught them completely off guard. The shock caused him to panic so badly he could barely breathe and had to use an inhaler. Afterward, his mom argued with him privately for a while, but eventually calmed down and handled the situation more reasonably than expected. Story 33. I was at a bar with my girlfriend, and she was being very playful and affectionate. We stepped outside to get some privacy and spent some time alone in the car. When we came back into the bar, somehow everyone knew. The entire place erupted into applause. It was hilarious, but also incredibly embarrassing. Story 34. One time, my sister unexpectedly walked into my room during a very private moment between me and my girlfriend. She froze, stared for a second, and then walked out, immediately calling for our mom. The panic that followed was unforgettable. Story 35. This one is less about getting caught and more just awkward timing. It happened on prom night. Exactly the cliche scenario you'd expect. Everything felt dramatic and unforgettable, mostly because of how nervous and unprepared I was. I drove her home, and we started hooking up in the back of my Volvo station wagon in her driveway. A little bit into it, her monster of a dad comes out to grab something out of his car, and we both just go still with her on top of me. He grabs whatever it was and goes back in. Thank my windows were super tinted and it was dark because that dude would have yanked me through the window. It somehow made it more enjoyable. Story 36. I remember trying to sneak a snack late at night and tripping over the dog bowl. The noise woke everyone up and they found me sitting on the floor with a mouthful of cheese. We still laugh about it now. Story 37. I bought an Oculus Rift when I was 19 and discovered VR adult film. On a day where my entire family was out, I was pleasure with the headset on and volume up. Never watched with volume, so I could make sure no one walked in on me. But I thought everyone was out, so decided to treat myself to some volume to amplify the experience. When I was finished and took the headset off, there was a fresh cup of tea on my desk. I didn't go downstairs for like 5 hours because I was drowning in my own embarrassment. Story 38. One time I tried to send a risky pic to a girl I was talking to, feeling confident, angles perfect, lighting on point, and somehow I sent it to my barber instead. My barber. 2 minutes later, he replies, "Brother, wrong number," and then adds, "Anyway, your haircut is ready tomorrow." I've never canceled an appointment so fast in my life. Now every time I pass that shop, I feel like he knows too much. The worst part? He still says, "Relax your head." And I don't know which head he means. Story 39. I got caught in the car trying to have sex with my GF by security of some company. We were parked outside of their building. Didn't even notice it was there. It was so dark. We ended up driving to my place. Story 40 was a dumb 25 years ago. My girlfriend, first wife, and I decided to get freaky in a parking garage elevator at like 10 p.m. Nobody was around and no cameras back then. I couldn't get the stay here button to work, so we went to the ground floor where a couple was waiting to go up. I was mid-finish when the door opened. Yeah, that was embarrassing. Story 41. My friend was traveling for work and not happy about it. So I was sending him a tit pic of the day of me. I took pics outdoors sometimes. I was busted by a couple of guys when I was taking one of the pics. Story 42, for context. We do our business with rain sounds playing on the Google Home at max volume. We also sleep to rain sounds at the same volume. You can hear the rain sounds in the hallway. We heard knocking on the door, and our doors are always locked, and we double check before starting. My GF and I were at it full. We hear knocking on the door from her daughter. We quiet up and wait, and didn't hear another knock. We continue at it. We finish and start getting cleaned up when we notice the door wide open in the bathroom. Laundry room in the hallway connects to our bathroom as another entry/exit door. The door doesn't make any noise when it's opened. Her older daughter had secretly shown her how to use a small, flat tool to unlock bedroom doors. So when we didn't respond, she unlocked the door and walked in on us during an extremely private and unfortunate moment. The timing could not have been worse. Story 43. I lived about 2 hours away from her, so we only saw each other on weekends. Every Friday afternoon, I'd stop by her house because her parents were always at work. One day, we were in her room when suddenly her mom came home early. She opened the door without warning, saw us, immediately realized what was happening, and calmly said, "Sorry," before closing it again. Later, she jokingly made a comment comparing me to my dad. Somehow, that comment was even more embarrassing than getting caught in the first place. Story 44. When I was 17, I was at my girlfriend's house while her parents were supposed to be away. Her dad, who worked in law enforcement, unexpectedly came home early. I heard him outside near the backyard and knew I had seconds to react. I hid behind the door but realized he would see me as soon as he came inside, so I quickly slipped outside, climbed over the fence, and ran into the darkness. He probably knew someone had been there, but I hoped he didn't realize it was me. Story 45. One time during a private moment with my partner, I suddenly noticed her mom outside the basement window. She had come over to let the cat inside, but ended up making direct eye contact with me. She didn't look away immediately, which made the situation incredibly uncomfortable. The moment felt like it lasted forever. Story 46. When I was stationed overseas in the Navy, I shared a small barracks room with another sailor. We had bunk beds, and every few days he had overnight duty on the ship, leaving me alone in the room. One night, thinking I had complete privacy, I let my guard down, only to realize later that privacy in shared living spaces is never truly guaranteed. Me decided I wanted to pleasure myself after a shower, completely naked, and I didn't want to climb to the top bunk. I was so horny. I was spread eagle and completely naked on his bed with my right hand occupied when that door unexpectedly opened up. Story 47. I was doing my girlfriend. We were finished and I was on top of her in missionary. While focusing on my and her finish, I heard her door opening but kept on going. Her dog came in, licked my asshole, and I finish. My asshole was never licked again. Story 48. I was with my kind of girlfriend once at a party. Everyone was out at the bonfire, so we decided to make some use of our other friend's bed. He was cool with it. Well, the mother of the friend who lent us the bed barged in said that she's not running a whorehouse, and marched my shirtless self out by my ear, then went to have a chat with the girl. Story 49. I was banging my ex-girlfriend on the washing machine in her house when her mom came in. My ex locked the door so we would be alerted if anyone came home early. But instead of knocking on the door or calling, she took the side door around the house. We didn't account for that. So there she was, looking at my naked behind, pants on my ankles, and her daughter's legs in the air. It was kind of awkward afterwards. Story 50. Me and my girlfriend hanging out, went to dinner, had a great time. Later, we are back in her room as I am giving her the HJ. Mom walks in without knocking. I slap her and said, "Baby, who's the boss?" She said, "You are." "No, Tony Danza is the boss." And I slap her again. Exactly the second this happened, she explodes in laughter and finished so hard I was pushed out like a rocket. Mom struggled with what to do. Mortified, she closed the door and just walked away. This all transpired in about 20 seconds. Story 51. Not for me, but the guy was working the door one night and got a call to check out the car park, walked down the alley to the back and saw nothing. As I turned back, on the other side was a space for 2 cars, and on the bonnet of one of the cars was a beast. Wildebeest even. And this guy, who looked like he would do all right with the ladies, well on his way to arriving at Pound Town, pointed out to them that this was private property and they were on camera, and that they might try the next alley over as it was darker. She was trying to cover herself up, and old mate had the dog hips still going on. Bit harsh, but shame on his mates for letting that happen. They emerged for the alley moments later with him leading her to the darker alley. Story 52. A bunch of us had the run of a friend's apartment on weekends during the summer. Me and a girl, A, had an on-again, off-again relationship. And that night, it was definitely on. Was on the bed in the parents' bedroom with my face buried between her legs when I heard the door open, a gasp, and then the door quickly closing. Didn't see the person, but we knew we were busted. Later found out it had been the girl's BFF, B, who herself had just been caught in another bedroom with her boyfriend and another girl, C, by her, C's, ex-boyfriend. Rest of the night was going to awkward. Story 53. Was 32 at that time. Had gone to visit my parents. That was before sold the house and moved to the rural area. You see, I was raised in that area, so I casually invited a certain female friend over, since my parents were not at home at that time. One thing led to the other in my room, and we had sex. We moved from my room to other rooms, except my parents' bedroom, so when we were in the living room, the door opened, and there was my dad. I had forgot to lock the door. He caught us. Story 54. My now-wife girlfriend and I were long distance for a bit. I flew up to spend some time with her, and we didn't make it out of the parking garage. Chevy Blazer. Drop of the back tailgate, got it on right there. Only to notice the security camera like almost directly pointing at us. We moved to inside the car, and after things are done, we notice a couple of construction dudes and a couple security folks hanging out not too far away. Oops. Story 55. Me and a girl were in the bathroom of a train. I ended up with my shirt off and got a HJ. When we went to leave, I couldn't find my shirt. I walked out of the bathroom, and one of the chaperones was standing outside of the bathroom with my shirt and told me nice card trick. I'd been doing card tricks, and handed it back to me. Story 56. My boyfriend, now ex-husband, and I got walked in on by his dad while I do BJ in the living room. He smirked, went upstairs, closed the door. His mom came home once while we were having sex and lost her ever-loving crap. Story 57. When I was about 18, making out with my boyfriend on the sofa, early hours in the morning, straddling him, topless, and my dad walked in. Don't think I've ever gotten over it. Story 58. Oh, hold my beer and my dignity, because we're cranking this tragedy to 11. Picture this. Sophomore year, same trash heap of a house in redacted town, roommates all out, blacked out, till sunrise, like the nocturnal gremlins they were. I'm alone, lights dimmed to romantic serial killer levels, just one sad red solo cup lamp and the glow of my shame, my forbidden love. Moby Idiot, the jumbo inflatable orca I'd borrowed from the backyard after last summer's ragger. Except now he's upgraded. Fishnet stockings stretched, a tiny thong I stole from my ex's laundry pile, don't ask, and I duct taped a sex toy to his underbelly like some deranged maritime engineer. Full commitment. Whale noises on speaker, lube everywhere. I'm riding this aquatic apocalypse like it's the final boss of Pool Toys Gone Wrong category, grunting Free Willy at full volume. Then, bam! The front door doesn't just open, it gets kicked in like a SWAT raid. Jake, 6 feet 4 inches, drunk as a skunk, wearing a traffic cone as a hat, leads the charge with pledge bros behind him, all carrying leftover keg cups and bad decision. They pile in like clowns from a clown car. Freeze frame mid-laugh, time stops. Moby lets out the longest, saddest, squeakiest deflation fart ever recorded, like the world's most disappointed whoopee cushion. I'm straddling this cross-dressed sea mammal mid-thrust, glistening like a greased otter, staring back at a wall of open mouths and phone flashlights. Jake, in slow-motion horror movie voice, "Bro, is that our BBQ whale? Why does it look like it got dressed for RuPaul's Drag Race? And why are you—" I screamed the first thing my panicked brain could grab. "This is for my marine biology thesis. It's called Interspecies Bonding in Captivity." Absolute silence for 0.3 seconds before the room detonates. One pled, projectile, vomits, natty light across the coffee table. Another starts howling, "He's ducking Shamu," and films it vertically, like it's TikTok gold. Jake falls to his knees, laughing so hard he wheezes, "I knew you were into fish, but this is next level." Someone blasts the Jaws theme on their phone. Another yells, "Avatar, The Last Airbender, but make it horny." Phones are out, memes are being born in real time. I try to dismount gracefully, fail spectacularly, slide off Moby in a lube slip and slide, land on the carpet with a wet splat. The orca wheezes one final death rattle squeak and fully flattens like it just gave up on life. Next morning, group chat renamed Operation Orca Feist. Profile pics swapped to me photoshopped onto the Free Willy jump scene, but instead my horrified face mid-slide. Every time I walked into the kitchen, someone would whisper, "Save the whales" from Andrew. For weeks, they'd play whale sounds whenever I entered a room. One pledge made a SoundCloud track called Moby's Lament that sampled the deflation fart and got 200 plays from our house alone. Morale? Lock the damn door. Buy soundproofing. Story 59. Once was enjoying adult film, and sometimes videos have no audio, so I didn't question the silence. But then, a message my mom sent popped up asking if I could disconnect from the Bluetooth speaker that was downstairs. Story 60. I was getting a HJ behind the library in the little alley that back up to the LA River on Platte in Woodland Hills, and a mom stopped her minivan 5 feet behind me and glared at me as I finish on the wall. Story 61. Experimenting with a sex toy up inside in the shower. My sister just barges right in. She didn't see anything, but I started to make sure the door was locked. Story 62. Not me, but a buddy of mine was going to use the washroom in which was attached to the bedroom of the other tenant who lived in the house. Basically, we were sharing a washroom since the one in our room had plumbing problem. The guy gave us a key to his room and told me, "Do not knock, just come in, use and leave," since he used to do. So one day my friend opens his door and the guy was pleasure to some video which was being played on his triple screen computer in 4K. My friend shuts the door and comes back. The guy comes outside and starts shouting about why he didn't knock or so. Situation escalated pretty quickly, and all of us had to move out of the house within 2 months due to the small fights happening between those two guys just because of him pleasure. Although I was chill with both and often joked about it to them. Story 63. Guy do HJ on me on the floor of his basement den while we were watching a movie. I started peeking right when his roommate walked down the stairs and practically ran out the back door once he saw what was happening. Of course, the second I saw his roommate, my legs clamped down on his head, I exclaimed, "Oh," and tried to roll over right at his roommate. I was thoroughly embarrassed, but neither of them seemed to care, but I won't have sex on that den floor ever again. Story 64. BF had friends over for a Halloween party. I went as a cat, just normal clothes and a bit of face makeup and ears. Everyone leaves. I give my BF a BJ. He finishes and goes to shower. I'm still in the main room when a friend walks in and sees me. Cat makeup, ears, collar, and leash. And that most humiliating part was she could see the tail I had in because I had nothing else on. She was all right about it. Just laughed, said meow a few times, and said she forgot her purse, grabbed it, and left. Laughing. Story 65. Got caught by my little brother while doing with my girlfriend. He barged into the room asking about a game he wanted to borrow. Saw my girlfriend laying on top of me, trying to cover my junk with her body. I just slowly came up from between her legs, asking him if he was unable to knock on the door before coming in. He didn't say a word and closed the door. Nowadays, we can laugh about it. Story 66. My girlfriend of the time and I were in the act when her blind sister walked into the room. I went silent and hoped that the sister didn't realize I was in the bed, let alone inside her sibling. Still, to this day, I'm not sure if I went unnoticed or if the sister knew what we were up to. Story 67. For me nout, for a remaining nameless friend, she got caught giving her boyfriend a BJ in a car park. Then, her mom caught her 6 months later tying her boyfriend to the bed. She has no shame telling people she got caught either. Story 68. Was getting really into some doggy style, and it was raucous, finished. And as I got off my ex, I noticed a basket of fresh laundry on my desk that wasn't there when I started. Thanks, Mom. Story 69. Grew up on a large cattle ranch. One corral location had a large concrete holding tank that was fairly clean due to a large population of goldfish, some at over a foot long. It was a hot and dusty day, and I'd spent most of the day fixing problem areas in the corrals. I stripped down for some skinny dipping in the cold water of the tank. Mind you, the place was off the beaten path, and the main entrance was through a locked gate. The back way was entered through a series of dirt roads that Urea had to know well to get there. I got done with my swim and was lounging, sun-drying on the wide concrete side of the tank when I heard voices. 2 middle-aged ladies were looking at me as I lay there buck naked. They asked for directions on how to get out of the area without going through the locked gate. They were just out exploring the country. I was really embarrassed, but I gathered courage and sat up to tell them the best way out. I even got down off the tank, slipped on my boots, and went with them to their vehicle to draw out a map for them, all while wearing nothing but boots. They thanked me and stared a lot, and then smiled and waved as they left. I'm sure they had one story to tell at gatherings for the rest of their lives. Needless to say, I didn't go skinny dipping there anymore. I just started packing swim trunks. Had I been less embarrassed, I could have invited them into the house that was there for a little rest and relaxation. But hindsight is always 20/20, as the saying goes. Story 70. We were using office chairs to race down the halls of the university. This is why they closed the doors of lecture halls now. And all chairs now have no wheels. Staff aren't even allowed to buy their desk chairs with wheels and bring them to work. It's strictly banned. Just because a bunch of us did that, in 2006 I checked last year. The ban is still ongoing. There's a policy now that says due to safety measures, no non-stationary furniture hall be used on university. Story 71. My girlfriend and I always hung out in her finished basement. We were having fun, and her older brother and his wife stopped by to visit and came downstairs to see us. All we had time to do was throw a blanket over us. We both had shirts on, but no pants or underwear. They stayed for about an hour talking to us. Her brother kept trying to get me to shoot pool with him. It was awkward as hell. Story 72. Me and an ex were having our last ciggies of the night. We thought her parents had gone to bed, so one thing led to another, and I'm going down till she came. Well, just as she finished, rather a mess as well. Her mom walks in still, with stuff in my beard. I wasn't allowed to sleep over again. Story 73. I don't know if it counts, but one time while sharing nudes to my now ex-girlfriend, instead of sending them to her, I post them in my story and didn't realize for like a good hour. That still haunts me to this day and kind of messed up my life. Story 74. Was getting a massage and was offered a happy ending. I both nervous and excited accepted. Guess it was too much of both because I finished the moment she touched it. Wasn't even fully hard yet. So embarrassing. Story 75. Mom came in while I was hitting it from the back. We jumped and got covered up. Mom saw everything didn't leave the room and proceeded to talk about dinner and work plans. We worked at the same place. Story 76. Me and my GF were heading out to the boons to stay at my parents' cabin with them. It's about midnight, and we're driving through the dark forest, and figure before we get there, we'd pull off in the forest down a dark road to duck, since we wouldn't be able to once we got there, thin walls. So we started in the car, but that was awkward with no space. So we moved outside. She's got her skirt up around her hips. I'm standing and ducking her. I literally just came, we're kissing, and then all of a sudden we're lit up with headlights. Apparently this dark forest road leads to someone's house, and just that they decided to come home. So I'm awkwardly running to get in the car, pants around my ankles. She's not wearing anything up top and actively dripping down her leg while trying to not get it on her skirt. We hop in the car. I throw it in reverse. They won't move. They're not letting us leave. So I just start moving backwards, and they sit there right until there's almost contact. They finally start to move out of the way until there's enough space to get past them and reverse out and get on the main road again. The lady was just getting out of her car and yelling something at us as I peeled out of there. Story 77. Myself and a friend got together in the middle of the night, got in friend's car, and drove around till we stopped in a place where, in hindsight, it was probably a bad idea. 10 minutes go by. Things start getting frisky, and my friend was about to give me BJ. Knock on the window. It's a sheriff's deputy. He'd pulled up behind us because apparently somebody called to report a suspicious car. Probably thought it was someone waiting for a substances deal or something. It's sort of a small town where people would think such things about random cars in the middle of the night. I managed to cover up. My friend rolled down the window and kind of just started fumbling some excuse about how the car wouldn't start or something like that. I could tell the deputy wasn't buying it, so I just shushed my friend and told the deputy that we were fooling around and that we both lived with our parents, so we didn't have a place at home where we could do so. I guess he either appreciated the honesty or didn't want the potential bad press of hassling gay because he let us go with a warning. Needless to say, that kind of killed the vibe for the rest of the night. Story 78. Pleasure was a daily, or 2 to 3 times daily, occurrence. I was in my bedroom one day and left the door open because I was sure everyone was downstairs. Thinking I had complete privacy, I let my guard down. Then suddenly, my mom walked in. She paused, said, "Oh," and quietly walked out. I immediately tried to act like nothing had happened. Later, she had an awkward conversation with me and said if I ever had questions about growing up, I could talk to my dad. Story 79. I had just started talking to a girl from a dating app, and we were texting and joking around all day. During an online class, I wasn't paying much attention and decided to send a playful voice message related to our conversation. Unfortunately, I forgot my microphone was still connected to the meeting. My tutor heard everything and immediately called me out before removing me from the session. It was painfully embarrassing. Story 80. One time, my boyfriend and I were spending a quiet moment together in his room when his little sister suddenly walked in without knocking. We quickly covered up, but she just stood there, laughing for several seconds. Then she casually asked him a completely unrelated question, as if nothing unusual was happening. After she finally left, we just sat there in silence, trying to process what had just happened. Story 81. It was my first serious relationship, and one night I was at my girlfriend's house. Her mom was asleep in the other room, and we were sitting together on the couch, enjoying the moment and not paying attention to anything else. Suddenly, her mom cleared her throat from the doorway. We froze instantly. She calmly mentioned that someone outside was honking their car horn and asked if I could check on it. Trying to act normal, I quickly stepped outside and discovered it was my friend, asking if I wanted to come help with a late-night job. The timing could not have been more awkward. No. Then I had to go back inside to face her mom, not knowing what her reaction was going to be. Luckily, she was pretty cool about it. She knew she couldn't keep it from happening eventually, just wanted us to be responsible. Story 82. When I was 22, my wife, girlfriend at the time, invited me over for Thanksgiving dinner with her family. We had fun, but somewhere down the line, my wife and I got a little horny and wanted to be daring. We started touching each other's private areas while making out, and since the house was big and everyone was starting to leave, we thought we had time for a quickie in a part of the house that no one really walked by or used. I started duck it while covering her mouth since she was loud, but I guess how my now MIL heard the cheek clapping and walked into the room we were ducking in. She turned on the light and caught me mid in her daughter. She wasn't mad, but I think rather shocked. We laugh about it now, but when it first happened, all of our hearts sank, especially mine because my MIL saw me naked. I feel bad about it to this day. Story 83. Going at it with my ex and first real partner in the forest one day, we felt frisky. I heard someone and realized too late they were very close. Looked around so as to spot from where they were approaching and locked eyes with the pedagogy cresting the ridge close by. Just as my partner finished me off, she immediately changed course along the ridge, and we could hear her say something about the bug trap being further up the crest, though I had somewhat of a hard time concentrating on what she said. We packed up immediately, and as we left the spot, we saw plenty of bug traps that we completely missed when picking the spot. Story 84. I went to a girlfriend's house. It wasn't the very first time I went, but it probably was the second or third I went. We were hanging out in the pool, and since she shared her room with her sister, we didn't really have a private space for, well, anything. So after the pool, we were on a couch she had on the backyard. We started kissing, and things started heating up a bit. We had swimsuits on, so with things heating up, I ended up using my hands. Well, her dad, that was kind of a complicated guy to deal with, wasn't home when we started, but got there at some point, and we didn't realize. So he greets us by walking into me using my hands and yelling, "Hello," and immediately jumps into the pool or making a bomb dive, splashing the most water he could. Story 85. Mom opened my door and walked in on me due HJ, a friend of mine. She yelled, "Oh my, I'm sorry," then shut the door and my friend began laughing hysterically as a stress response while mortified all was fine though. A year after that, Dad walked in on a perfect view of my duck my girlfriend. He was coming in to say it was time for her to head home because it was getting late. Big yikes, he had no idea I was already active. Little did he know, the year before was when my mom caught me. They both never, ever came into my room without knocking ever again from those points forward. Story 86. Ex-GF lived in a separate house in the same plot of land as her folks. Think bungalow, but in Mexico City. I came over, she told me her mom couldn't know. Lo and behold, the mom comes over from the main house to chat with daughter. I pull the oh-so-cliche of getting under the bed naked with my clothes so Mom doesn't see. Mom proceeds to sit down and have a long chat with X. I'm holding my breath, lying as still as I can. Make no noise, silently cursing at X's mom, mentally willing her to go away. Mom finally decides to leave, reminder that all I can see is ankles. And just as she's crossing the door, she turns and tells X, "Oh, tell him he can come out now," and leaves. And so did I. Laugh about it in hindsight. Story 87. My wife and I joined the rest of her family in going to a ryokan, Japanese hot spring hotel for New Year's. Bunch of people sharing rooms. When we got back from the baths, my wife and I realized our kids were stole with her dad. So she basically pounced on me and, well, I wasn't going to say no to that. Crap went down. Clawing, clapping, growling, all the things. It was great. However, it turned out we forgot that my brother-in-law's wife, who was sharing the room with us, never went to the bath, due to there being curtains around all the futon. We didn't even think to check, and she heard everything. We didn't know she was there until she sneezed. They still don't look each other in the eye. Story 88. I had brought my girlfriend to my parents' house, where I lived, after our shift at the drive-in theater. We necked for a bit in the room directly beneath my parents' bedroom and took a nap. This was around 4 a.m. I awoke to the sounds of my parents starting their days, walking about in their bedroom. I picked her up cradle style and tried to sneak out the door. When I turned around, still carrying her to shut the door, and there was my dad standing at the foot of the stairs. He looked at me, I looked at him. I pulled the door shut and carried her to the car. After I drove her home and returned home, it was never spoken of again. I wonder still what my dad thought. Story 89. Was having sex with my GF in her parents' house, her room. We were both 20 plus at that moment, so people knew what could possibly go on. That day, her mom knocked on the door while we were right in RIA, middle of the job. Started asking trivial questions about lunch and stuff through the closed door. About 3 minutes later, she and my girlfriend were in a full-blown argument about something while I was still lying on top of my girlfriend with my weenie inside her, when suddenly my girlfriend screamed at her mother, "I don't care, Mom, because he's on top of me with his in me." We didn't hear a single word from her mother for a long time. Story 90. Okay, so I had this boyfriend, but mind you, I was still in the closet, so as far as anyone knew, we were just old friends. I lived with my grandmother at the time, and she had left to go to the store or something. Anyway, we can imagine what we were doing, and he was not quiet. Anyway, after we finish, I hear some noise going on in the house. I look out the window. My grandmother's car is parked right there. She had gotten home 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I don't know, but what I do know is there's no way she didn't hear that. She never said anything to me about it, but I could tell. Yeah, my grandmother, she knew I was gay way before anybody else in the family. Story 91. My girlfriend was living with one of her friends and the friend's father in a 2-bedroom house. She had moved out of her house into there, and the dad gave up his room for her. One night, we went out with another friend of hers that was in town from another state and ended up back at that house to sleep, all 3 of us in the master bedroom while the master of the house slept on the couch. We ended up having a sex and not planned, things just kind of happened, and the next thing I know, I've got her friend on me, and then there's a knock on the door. He had had enough listening to it, even though we thought we were being really quiet. Yeah, that was awkward. Story 92. A few years ago, I was with an ex in a park, being more affectionate than we should have been. At least we were in a somewhat secluded area, when suddenly I saw the silhouette of someone familiar in the distance. I didn't think much of it until I checked my family's Life 360 app. Even though I'm 18, my parents still insist on knowing where I am at all times, but the app allows you to track the movements of other family members connected to Life 360, and that's how I knew that the familiar figure in the park was actually my father, who had come to keep an eye on me. It still disgusts me to think that he saw me being too affectionate with my ex. Story 93. I was driving a friend home one snowy evening when the opportunity presented itself. We parked behind a shopping center and hopped into the back seat. I forgot to turn off the headlights. She was a gifted partner. Suddenly, flashing red lights and a knock on the window. Officer tells me to step out of the car. I ask if I can get dressed first, and he looks me dead in the eye and says no. I step out completely naked with snow up to my ankle and stand there while he lectures me about public indecency. Before letting us go, he tells me that his dash cam is recording and tells me to wave at the camera. Story 94. All right, buckle up. I live in a very old house, the kind where doors are closed by a bolt that holds onto a square piece of metal jammed into the wall. Anyway, when it was getting steamy with my then GF, she's in top, going wild, her being pretty loud. Unbeknown to us, my sister came home, wanted to say hi, and tried to open the door with a little too much force. The closing mechanism got ripped straight out of the wall. My ex still sitting on me, while my sister just stares and gores, like, "Oh, hi, I'm his sister. Nice to meet you. What's your name?" Yeah, that killed him. Story 95. Was having sex with my ex. Doors of the house were open. He came in and must have heard the moans and all, because when he came near my room, he did not knock or say anything. He just coughed a little and went away. So we got dressed up and I went outside. My father had a little smile, but was also angry. Did not say anything, did not mention it ever again. Then he met my ex, but it was not that awkward. It was fine. And in my country, sex is seen as a taboo or something that should be sacred. I wish the ex was not a lying cheated, had a lot of such fun memories. Story 96. Was making out with and do HJ and ex in her car while parked at her parents' business. It was after hours and kind of late at night. Her mom drove by and saw her car and figured something might be wrong, so she stopped. We didn't see her due to being so distracted. I eventually noticed the headlights as she was leaving. Apparently, she walked up, noticed what was going on, and peace out without saying anything. We were like 20 at the time. Her mom never really spoke to me or made eye contact for the rest of the year, so we dated. Story 97. I performed an evening marriage ceremony for a friend at his family farm and had a few drinks at his reception with my girlfriend. We eventually headed back to my Jeep, top down, and started making out. She got on my lap in the driver's seat and was riding me until I heard voices behind us. It was the groom's parents. Are you sure you're okay to drive? Maybe you'll ought to stay for a while? Nope, we're good, thanks. I don't recall what they said after that, but GF was mortified, so we stopped and drove straight home. Story 98. I was having sex in the office of the nightclub I worked at after close. We were pretty drunk and very loud, but being careful enough not to destroy the office. After we were done, she hiked up her miniskirt and did a little dance out of the office door, and neither one of us realized that the cleaning crew was already there. To her credit, she didn't miss a beat and told them, "Enjoy the show, boys," as she strutted to the parking deck. I, however, turned about 7 shades of red as the cleaning crew applauded me. Story 99. I got caught doing the deed on the first level of a parking garage in broad daylight. Was on top riding while taking to the view of the city, and all of a sudden we hear a, "Hey!" I turn my head. There's an older man about 70 and his car window open. He was surely just trying to find a parking space, just caught us in the middle of it. To make matters worse, we bolt out of there on foot, and afterwards we get followed by the same guy about 10 minutes later. Story 100. One time my wife and I were spending a private moment together and weren't paying attention to anything else. Her phone was nearby, and somehow it accidentally called her grandma. Her grandma heard strange sounds and became concerned, so she called my wife's parents to make sure everything was okay. We had no idea any of this happened until later when we noticed several missed calls and messages asking if we were safe. Apparently, they were close to coming over to check on us before my wife reassured them everything was fine. It was equal parts embarrassing and hilarious. Story 101. I was at my girlfriend's house one day. She told me her mom was working and her sister had plans, so we thought we had the house to ourselves. We completely relaxed, assuming no one would be back anytime soon. Suddenly, the door opened, and her sister walked in unexpectedly. Her plans had been canceled, and she came home early. Neither of us had heard her enter the house. The shock on everyone's faces said it all. Story 102. During a school event, I had a moment with someone from my class that quickly turned into something more emotionally intense than I expected. It all happened quietly and unexpectedly, and afterward, I needed a moment alone to collect myself. That experience stayed with me for a long time, mostly because it was my first real encounter with that kind of closeness. Story 103. When I was younger, my sister once accidentally walked in on me during a very private and awkward moment. Later on, when I started dating my first girlfriend, her family was extremely strict and privacy was almost impossible to find. One rare time when we were left alone, we tried to enjoy the moment, but the constant fear of being interrupted made everything feel tense and awkward. Turns out, we weren't alone, and her sister came downstairs, didn't catch us in the act, but did see us both red-faced and breathless. Story 104. I was pretty sick, but on the phone with a friend who was telling me how to enjoy the toys be bought me for his enjoyment. Ended up making more noise than intended between moaning and coughing. And I guess it sounded pretty bad because my mom came into my room to check if I was okay, and I had to very quickly disguise what I was doing. My friend and I had a good laugh about it though. Story 105. Public bench on a greenway near my local watering hole. Flipped up her dress and bent her over the picnic bench late one night. Was so caught up in the passion, we didn't see the couple walking up until it was too late. We just paused and hunkered over trying not to laugh, but they definitely knew what was going on. A fond but definitely caught in the act moment I won't forget. Story 106. My girlfriend was living with her dad in a 2-bedroom apartment. We thought he was out, so we had super loud sex for like 30 to 60 minutes. Like headboard banging, lots of moaning and screaming, loud dirty talk, spanking, everything. A few minutes after we're done, her dad yells from the hallway, "Okay, I'm heading out now." He never brought it up, and neither did we. Story 107. I was having sex on a girlfriend's dad's pool table. He walks in, looks us right in the eyes, turns us, and walks out. Second time, I was ducking my wife in shower. We finished. I walked out with a towel on, luckily to find her dad sitting on the couch. I said, "Hey, hun, your dad's here." He said, "Sorry, I thought you said come in." Well, she did, just not to him. Story 108. I was pleasure myself one night. My mom dead-ass walked in, and I was listening to adult film through my headphone, and I didn't hear her walking in. I was laying on my belly, and she just flipped my blanket over, asking me what I was doing. I was so shocked, I put my hand out and said I was scratching my stomach because I had a terrible stomach ache. Worst day ever. Story 109. I once had a situation go completely wrong while sitting in the back seat of my car in a quiet library parking lot. Everything seemed fine until suddenly I heard a flashlight tapping on the window. The glass had fogged up so much that I hadn't noticed a police officer pulling in. He told us to leave immediately, and we didn't waste a second. After that night, I never saw her again. Story 110. My girlfriend and I were living with roommates, so we rarely had complete privacy. One time we went back to my parents' house while they were away, thinking we finally had the place to ourselves. We relaxed completely, assuming no one else was there. Then suddenly, I heard my brother's bedroom door close. I had no idea if he had just arrived or if he had been there the entire time without us realizing. Story 111. I'm torn between two awkward moments. The first was when my girlfriend's mom unexpectedly walked in on us during a private moment. The second happened years later, when I was older. My aunt suddenly opened my bedroom door while my girlfriend and I were alone. She immediately realized she had interrupted something, quickly apologized, and closed the door again. Story 112. I was alone at home one day, relaxing in the living room, thinking I had complete privacy. Suddenly, I heard the front door open. The shock completely caught me off guard. I tried my best to act normal and stayed where I was, hoping nothing seemed unusual. No one ever mentioned it afterwards, so to this day, I don't know if they realized anything. Story 113. My ex and I were upstairs in his house, completely unaware that his roommate was downstairs giving a flute lesson. Apparently, they could hear noises coming from above. When the student asked about it, the roommate calmly explained it away by saying there was construction happening upstairs. Story 114. One of the most intense moments happened when my girlfriend's dad unexpectedly walked in on us during a private moment. He was extremely shocked and angry, and the situation escalated quickly. She ended up staying at my parents' house for a few days until things calmed down and everyone had time to process what happened. Story 115. I sent a snap to my entire story, sexting my ex, who was away on vacation with her family friends. Everyone caught me pleasure myself. It's so cringy it hurts when I think about it. I don't think I'll ever recover from that one. It's been years and still keeps me up at night. Story 116. Me didn't think those cameras with a dim red light in front of them in cinemas could possibly let them see in the dark. Turns out, when you start having full stealth sex on the back row, they send someone to awkwardly stand next to you. Story 117. My friend's mom walking in on me spanking the monkey in the guest bathroom of his house because of a faulty lock. When I was constantly tugging on it because I couldn't think of anything else but sex, I nearly died. Story 118. I was having sex with my then GF and we were going hard on each other. All of a sudden we hear, "Hello, hello, Lindsay," not her real name. She had left her phone in the bed and butt dialed her grandmother. Story 119. Wife and I had the day off together, or so we thought. We got a text from our daughter saying that the other stay-at-home thing and could hear us. Story 120. Don't know if it counts, but one time when I was horny with no money for a hotel room, I was caught in the act in an abandoned Budling, and me and my then GF had to walk past the guy who caught us while looking down. Story 121. Passed out from jet lag after flying to Italy in HS, only to have my roommates walk in on me passed out, with a German magazine in my lap and a couple tissues scattered about. Oops. What NSFW things have you seen at work? Story 1. I work in my university's library. The amount of people who try to have sex in the book stacks is even higher than you imagine, and they are never as discreet as they think they're being. It's a library. For duck's sake, people, we can hear you. Story 2. I work private security and we have thermal image cameras overlooking the beach at the property I work at. A couple had sex on the beach. We then confronted the couple. Once they got dressed and came onto our property, confirmed they were supposed to be on our property and they were of age. We advised them that we have thermal cameras overlooking the beach. The girl got super embarrassed. The guy couldn't have looked any prouder. Story 3. Worked on a farm. Gotta say, the most NSFW thing I saw constantly was people lifting buckets full of water, feed, or horse crap with their backs without bending their knees. Story 4. Worked at Walmart for a year an addict and his lady ducked in their car. We called the police and they were asked to leave, so to get back at us, they ducked in the cart bay. I was the cart pusher that found them. Story 5. When I was in the Marine Corps, I literally saw one of my coworkers slap another coworker in the face with his junk at work. I should have been shocked, but hey, it's the military. These things happen. Story 6. It was in a workshop, so not an office. The apprentice found a full Sunday dress in the bag of rags, so rather than rip it up himself and use it to clean up whatever ungodly mess apprentices usually make, he stripped off his overalls, put it on, and walked through the workshop grinning like a moron. He then lifted the dress and flashed his junk, because no one believed he fully stripped off. Story 7. I drive a truck. So, truck stops can be really NSFW at times. Walked into a bathroom at a stop just outside of Kentucky a few weeks ago, and there were two guys double teaming a girl in a shower stall. They were both big dudes. It looked like two grizzly bears ducking a sheep. Watched a lot lizard in Georgia get out of one truck. squat down and piss right next to it, walk over to a puddle and wash herself off, then jump in another truck. Story 8. Used to work late in retail, and closing time had two kinds of people. People who worked all day and squeeze in the shopping at 10 p.m., and a few local addicts who get high and wander around the shopping center until it closes. We had one customers come in, high as duck, just wandering around, taking their clothes off, and then start pleasure. Story 9. Some girl had her nipple hanging out while she was ordering when I worked in fast food. No, she was not breastfeeding. She wasn't aware of it, and I really wanted to be a bro and point it out so she could fix it, but I was also a little afraid of how she would react. So I just opted for maintaining very strict eye contact and acting like nothing was wrong. Story 10. Our security cameras caught a transaction take place on a stoop in the back alley. They walked up together, talked for a bit, then got down to business. She never took her heels off, and he didn't even drop his pants all the way. Afterwards, he paid her, in what we assume was substances or money, and they went their separate ways. We didn't call the cops. Everything looked consensual from what we could see. Story 11. This one guy walked into the ER with a priapism. It can be due to damage to the spinal cord, sickle cell anemia, etc. They need to be treated right away so as not to become necrotic from lack of oxygen. This guy had no risk factors, but for some reason just starting getting them. He had 3 in the past 4 weeks. So when he walked in, he already knew the drill. The ER doc I was working, I'm a med student with at the time, had only ever drained one before, but he thought it would be good practice for me to treat this once-in-a-lifetime medical condition. I'll never forget the look in that guy's eyes as I held his junk in one hand and then immediately stuck a needle in it. Story 12. People having sex in the fitting rooms at VS. It is not cool or sexy. The poor girl buying a bra for the first time with her mom in the next room doesn't want to hear that crap. You gross. Story 13. Stage grip here. 2 of the actors do BJ each other on a soap opera in a space between sets that was closed off. I had scouted it as my hidey hole to sleep during lunch. They had scouted it to play a different type of hidey hole. Story 14. I work in surgery. Our idea of NSFW is much different. Like someone bringing cardboard into a sterile area or having too much ponytail hanging out of their bouffant cap. I've seen a lot of craniotomy, exposed brain surgery, and heart transplant. Actually saw a lung transplant this evening, but a full leg amputation was the weirdest for me. Story 15 was in the military. A girl was rising fast through the ranks. She was seen as a go-getter. She gets promoted again, is expected to do certain things. She kind of sucks at it. She can't seem to keep up with the workflow. Despite this, she is promoted again. This is over the course of a couple of years. She gets promoted again, even though at this point, she doesn't have half the qualifications she needs to have to even be promoted. Before the advancement ceremony, word gets out she has been banging her superior the whole time. Everyone finds out she has slept her way through 3 ranks. The command looks at their emails, decides she was falsely advanced 3 times, and drops her back down. Everyone knows about it. She spends 3 months working and living with 300 people who know what she did in detail. She pops positive for substances on a piss test. She is on her way out 3 ranks lower than she was the year before. Like I said, everyone thought she was a go-getter, but now she is wallowing in infamy. She ended her life. End of the story. She loved him, he helped her. She felt so much shame, she started doing substances. The substances lead to her to being kicked out of a life she wanted for herself. She ended it. It started as a workplace drama and became workplace trauma. Story 16. As an archaeologist, I've had to do roadside surveys along the rural highways for Caltrans in Southern California to make sure nothing cultural is jacked up by future road work. I've seen so many NSFW that we thought about taking photos and making a coffee table book titled Where the Rubbers Meet the Road. On a particularly deserted stretch, I found a bent spoon and a few discarded syringes. At least they were practicing safe needle use. Good on you, desert addict. Story 17. I got a pretty good job, and when I was still brand new there, my friend sent me a link that I opened at work that caused dirty image. The image bounced around my screen, and I couldn't close out of it for a solid 10 seconds. Story 18. I was helping a guy try on skates, and next to us was a family who also needed help. So I call my friend up to help, and we go about our business helping the customers. What we didn't notice was one of the guy from the family had crap himself and was immediately getting naked. This guy then proceeds to sit down and start playing with his crap, all the while my friend and I are sitting there shocked. This is when his father notices, who is super embarrassed and tries to clean him up. The guy smelled so bad, so I showed the dad the bathroom where he could try and clean this smelly. I faked being sick so I could leave early and not have to clean the bathroom. Story 19. I work in IT. I worked with an objectively hot project manager the same age as me at the time, 10, but she knew it. Very high maintenance. She'd quite regularly bend over to pick something up from the waist when she should have bent her knees. At company events, people would try and hit on her, but she'd always have some rich boyfriend coming to pick her up. She'd flirt outrageously, but never any more than that. One evening, I'm finishing off a small desk move, and she comes back from a late meeting. We make small talk about working late. She says she has a few notes to type up, and asks if I'm the only one left at this point. I am. She goes off, I presume to the toilet, but comes back less than a minute later. I'm working under the desk opposite her on the pod. She sits down, and yes, I can see it all. I see her put her knickers into her giant handbag. "How are you getting on down there?" she asks. I'm too stunned to answer. "Have a good look. No one's going to believe you if you tell them anyway." So I do. After a few seconds, she crosses her legs and says, "Show's over. I need to go now. Have a nice evening," and gets up totally nonchalant. And no, none of my friends ever did believe me. Story 20. Saw a woman with an extremely advanced case of meningitis shakily watching me as I checked her in. She couldn't talk, but made sounds with her mouth when I greeted her. Her husband was with her holding her hand. He looked like he was trying to be brave for her, but from what I gleaned, things weren't looking good for her. Story 21. An old coworker did not know how to dress herself at all, and I frequently worked the shift after her. Single coverage small store meant only one working in the store at a time with a 15-minute overlap. I also frequently got texted pictures of her wardrobe malfunction. Most time it was just a scarf she opened and put on and needed me to ring her up when I got in. Other times it was more urgent and she'd request I show up early so she could go fix herself at home. One time it was a picture of her stuff. She had worn leggings that were too tight and they ripped out. She was not wearing underwear that day. I blocked her phone number and refused to open any text ever sent from her again. HR did jack crap about it. Story 22. Seeing nothing. We're a nice normal office where people do nice normal things. Or more accurately, we're a nice normal office full of people who look like they do nice normal things. But the conversations? That's where things get interesting. Phone sex. Long discussions about every illegal activity known to man. Stories about people's sex lives. About people's most recent trip to the bathroom. You know how you'll watch an HR training video and think, wow, they really have to tell us not to do that? Is there some office somewhere where people actually say those things? Yep, there is. Story 23. Working in sales, we had a lot of obvious substances use. One toilet permanently smelled of substances. We once took a decent dose of shrooms early in our shift as well. At one point, our superior plopped his junk out and put it on the shoulder of the guy sitting next to me. He turned his head around to see what it was and damn near kissed it. Story 24. I worked at a retail store for a few years and have seen or heard people having sex in the bathrooms, changing rooms. One couple even broke into our maintenance closet to get it on. I was the one to find them. Lucky me. It happens a lot more than you'd think. Story 25. Went into the office on a Saturday to get caught up on some paperwork. I learned that two of my coworkers were having an affair. I stumbled upon this information when I discovered them bent over the conference room table going at it. Story 26. Hospital tech here. Patients getting kinky. Always knock. Trust me. Various coworkers leaving the restrooms together, I guess that's what you got to do with 60-hour weeks. Well, let's just say the technician WhatsApp group is just ducked. You know, good old two girls, one cup level crap. The other day, the neighbor's cats were duck outside my office window, if that counts as well. Story 27. One time I didn't wrap a used tampon with enough layers. And when I went back to the bathroom later that day, you could definitely tell there was a blood-soaked tampon sitting on top the other trash in the trash can. Story 28. One morning, my buddy at a small office pulled me aside with a whisper and led me to the printer. There, for some reason, in the output tray was a receipt for an adult video purchased by a third coworker, also a friend. My buddy didn't know what to do. He just raised his eyebrows, turned on his heels, and peace out. I stood for 1 second, then didn't want to be involved, so I went back to my desk. And then after 1 minute of thinking about it, I went back, shredded the receipt, and never mentioned it to buddy or coworker or any boss or anybody. My guess is that coworker worked late, made a purchase. I had his back. Everyone gets one for free. Story 29. I worked as security guard in a community residence building for a year. The people didn't seem to realize the recreation/common rooms were all monitored by video cameras, and many of them chose that location at late night to enjoy themselves with each other. Having to go catch people in the middle of the act and kick them out is very awkward. Story 30. Lady looking down at her phone and getting run over by a forklift. She got fired and has to foot the bill. Work has a zero-tolerance policy for all electronics, especially in an area with vehicles. The forklift had the right of way. She turned the corner and bam, story 31. I'm a librarian. People have casually asked us for help at a computer only for us to walk over and see their nudies on the screen. No, none of them were attractive. Story 32. Walked into a shoot in a hotel room as maintenance for a smoke alarm. The adult stars answer the door. Room is full of fog from a fog machine. Cams and lights fill the room as well, and quite a few dudes manning the equipment, all in a daze as the smoke alarm is screaming. Hope I didn't show up on film as the maintenance man. Story 33. My coworker would take naps on the benches at work. We were camp counselors and she was supposed to be watching a group of children. That's not safe. She was fired eventually. Story 34. Didn't actually see it, wasn't there that day, but one of my coworkers at Hastings got fired for duck his girlfriend somewhere in the video rental section. Weren't even trying to hide it. He was there on Tuesday. I had Wednesday and Thursday off. Friday, he was fired. And the whole store was talking about how the adult video section was suddenly way more adult. Story 35. Ex-IT support here, CEO, asks me to repair his private laptop. And it would be nice if I could save his files, but it's okay if I couldn't do it. I found craploads, 70 folder, of picture sets of naked, fat women. It was more or less everything he had stored on his device. I told him that I didn't manage to restore the data. Some people asked me to exchange his company BlackBerry. I found several nudes of him and 2 different women. He came to my office a few hours later and told me to ignore his SD because he wants to transfer the data himself. Very conservative tax guy of our company has some malware on his PC. I checked his browsing cache and apparently someone used his PC to watch adult film. Also found some private nudes in browsing history and private credit card information. Story 36. Worked in a hotel kitchen and we were short-staffed due to an influenza breakout. So worked one shift prep cooking like normal and then half shifts delivering food to rooms. Walked up to the door and knocked and was greeted by a guy in probably his early to mid-50s with a fake pig nose strapped over his nose and Mama's Piggy written on his chest. Apparently, Mama thought it would be funny to have her open the door to be embarrassed. Story 37. So many titties. Women just don't seem to care about being nude when there are a bunch of them. I'm in maintenance and I can recall a few times where I'd be working in the women's restroom or locker room and they would proceed like I'm not there. I said something once about giving me literally just a minute to finish up and the only response I got was, "Karen, you a grown man? You isn't ever seen some titties? I'm trying to go home." Story 38. People's butts nearly every time. Work in a PT clinic, and when it's time for electric stim on people's lower backs, you gotta get down there. Like, I've seen it more than they have, and I'm uncomfortable knowing that.